Coming up on episode 211 of Wheel Bearings, we've got the Volkswagen Arteon, the Volvo XC40 Recharge, the 2022 Genesis GV70, and we have first drive of the 2022 Infiniti QX60. I also get a deep dive into the Cadillac Lyriq. We've got the Audi GrandSphere and an interview with Group Vice President of Infiniti Americas, Jeff Pope. All coming up next. Did you know you can support Wheel Bearings directly? Head to patreon.com/wheelbearingsmedia and you can become a patron today. Your contributions will help fund the platforms and tools we use to bring the podcast to you. And exclusives and improvements are already on the way thanks to your generosity. So if you want to be part of an automotive podcast like no other, head to patreon.com/wheelbearingsmedia. This is episode 211 of Wheel Bearings. I'm Sam with Buell Samet from Guidehouse Insights.
I am Nicole Wakeland from Auto Bytel.
And I am Roberto Baldwin, let's say Wired this week.
All right. Nicole, what have you been driving this week?
I'm continuing my trend of driving all things Hyundai related, and I am driving the Genesis GV70, which is new for 2022. I think everyone already knows I'm a pretty big fan of this brand. I feel like they give you an amazing amount of car and features and stuff for the price that you get. And it really is a luxury car. People don't think of the Genesis brand that way because you don't really know it. Like if you know, you know. If you don't, you're like, whatever, it's just another Hyundai. And it's not just another Hyundai. Interesting story before I really talk about the car. I took my daughter out to dinner last night and we came out from dinner and there is a man looking at the car and trying to like peer inside the windows to see it. He's like, what is this? I've never seen this. This is beautiful. What is this car? I opened the doors, turned on the engine. We probably spent like 10 minutes talking to this guy all about this car because he's completely intrigued. He's familiar with the Genesis brand. He really liked the Hyundai Genesis back in the day. And he's like, wow, this is amazing. This is really cool. Like he was really intrigued. He and his wife were like all over. They noticed every last detail too. Look at the contrast stitching. Look at the color of the seat belts. Look at the pattern on the wheels. Like this is just in the parking lot at a local restaurant, drew enough attention that a guy's like, I'm going to hover around this car, like literally with his head against the glass, trying to look inside. I was like, would you like an assist? I can open the doors for you. So it's fair to say that it looks really good and it attracts attention. I do love the wheels. It has the pattern on the wheels. It looks like, it makes me think of like, you know, when they say something's like hammered metal and you can see where like the metal worker hammered on it, made little divots with their hammer. It makes me think of that. They're the most beautiful wheels. They're super striking. But what this is, GV70, it's their new SUV. It's seating for 5. It has a 3.5 liter V6 turbo, 375 horsepower, 391 pound-feet of torque. 8-speed automatic transmission. It is very responsive. It moves. It sounds good. It has a nice sort of throaty exhaust sound to it without being this overly aggressive sports car because, there's some luxury vehicles that are really just all about the power and performance, and that is, 99% of their focus. I feel like when you have a car that still wants to be a luxury car, that gives you that luxury car thing, it can't go too hard to sporty or suddenly it loses what makes luxury cars fun to drive. The comfort, the quiet, that sort of just floaty kind of drive. And the Genesis has just enough of that built in with this performance. It has a really good balance. Like I feel like it's a very balanced car, if you're looking for a little sport, you're looking for a little luxury, you get them both. You don't feel like you're sacrificing either one. It has a massive 14.5 inch infotainment touchscreen that runs across the dashboard. And it is huge. Very easy to use. The touchscreen, the sensitivity on the touchscreen is great. And it has all the features you want. It has Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, it has HD radio, all those things. And the menuing system is pretty easy to follow.
Does it have the sounds of nature?
It has the sounds of nature, yes. In fact, we played through them. My daughter's like, why would you want it to sound like it's snow in your car? I'm like, wait, would you like it to sound like a cafe? And she's like, oh, okay, I can deal with that. Can we go to coffee? And then we can make it. So I ended up going to Starbucks. So maybe they're in a partnership with Starbucks because Starbucks sold some coffee because I use cafe mode. So the infotainment is easy to use, but I have one big gripe. On the center console, the way they have it, there's 2 dials. They're slightly different sizes, and the texture around the dial is different. So they do feel different. So if you grab one, you know that one, and you learned there's a different texture to around the edge of the dial between the infotainment and the gear shifter. It is so easy to throw that gear shifter into neutral when you're driving if you put your hand on the wrong spot. Ask me how I know. I was in that car for 5 minutes. I was on the highway. I put my hand down. I thought I had the infotainment, and immediately I'm like, nope, that was a gear shifter. Pop it back and drive and go along. There was more than one time where I reached down and sort of went, wait a minute, and had to look. I'm like, wrong one. So because the gear shifter is the one that's closer to your hand and the infotainment's a little further forward, and it could just be the natural seating position for me, but when I put my hand there, it wants to go to the gear shifter. I have to reach forward for the infotainment. I kind of feel like it should be the other way around. You should have to reach for the gear shifter, and the one you automatically go to while you're driving that's right there should be infotainment.
That seems like it would make sense because you want that a little bit because you're not shifting gears like a manual transmission.
You're not just shifting gear, right? Like
drive,
you don't
reverse, park. That's it. That's all you're doing.
Exactly. So I feel like that one should be placed a little bit like I've had to reach for that one. And I don't. I had to reach for the infotainment. So naturally, when I put my hand down, the first thing I hit is that gear shifter. My brain's like, that must be it. It's like, no. Keep reaching forward. So I feel like they're backwards in my head. I feel like they should be the other way around. Now, like I said, they do have very different textures, like around the whatever 1/4-inch edge around the dial, so they don't feel the same. So if you put your fingers on them and you start to know the gear shifter feels like this, the infotainment feels like that, you could very quickly kind of figure that out. But like I said, I was in it for 5 minutes. I got on the highway, went to change the infotainment, shifted the car to neutral right in the middle of the highway, and like, boop, right back to drive. Thank you very much. So that was my only real beef with the system. I guess it's kind of a big one. I don't know if anyone else will read into it. Like I said, maybe it was just how I was sitting, but I did not like that. I disliked.
No, I mean it does seem logical. You know what you're saying. You know where they're positioned. You know that the one that's closer, like when you put your arm down, on the armrest, that one is, I think, probably regardless. Unless you have gorilla arms,
right. Like you're
pretty much
6'5".
anywhere you sit, you're more likely, because the relationship of that shifter to the steering wheel is going to stay constant, more or less constant. I mean, the steering wheel can telescope a little bit, but it's going to be fairly steady. And so when your hand falls from the steering wheel down to the center console, it's going to inherently tend to land on that shifter, rather than reaching a little bit further forward. And this thing's an automatic; it's got paddle shift. So I think your idea of maybe swapping the positions of those two actually makes more sense because you're going to use that shift knob far less frequently, I think, except if you're doing a 3-point turn or something like that. Then you're likely to use the infotainment knob. On the plus side, though, I'm looking at a photo of this. Clearly, they learned from the complaints on the G80 and the GV80, which we've talked about before, with the kind of the flush-mounted controller that they had on those, and we talked about the texture on that not being quite enough to get a grip on it without pressing too hard and toggling it back and forth. So having that infotainment knob actually sticking up from the surface, more like a BMW iDrive style controller, I think makes sense here. But I do agree with you that it seems like the position should maybe be swapped. And so we'll see what they do on the G90, when
right.
that one comes out. see if they rearrange them again.
And you're right, it was a little bit.
It was a big improvement because it was hard. Like you couldn't grab the other controller. This one is just like, okay, now there's enough depth to it that you can actually grab it and spin it. So that, yes, gold star for that. Just not so much for the positioning of the two. And like every Genesis that I have been in ever, it feels like it should cost a good 10 grand more than it does. They just have these beautiful interiors. It's beautiful. It's comfortable. This one had all sorts of bells and whistles on it. So I think I was talking about this the other week. It had red seatbelts. I love it when there's like a pop of color in cars. When the seatbelts are a different color, it just warms my heart. So I'm like, oh, the seatbelts are red. And there's all sorts of little like red contrast stitching, and it's absolutely beautiful inside. Ours had the carbon fiber trim, which is an add-on. It's not like a standard feature. But everything in this car looked beautiful. It really is a gorgeous car on the inside, on the outside. So style-wise, they nailed it. Very comfortable. Drove it a good bit with my teenager in the back, and she sat behind my 6'3" husband and was fine. Didn't have her knees pressed up against her chin. You know, she had enough room to be comfy. So it's not hugely spacious, but it's spacious enough. You know, you can put adults in the back seat without them feeling squished. Good amount of cargo room. Oh, I loved small details again, where you put your phone to charge your phone. Most of the OEMs, they have a flat spot somewhere. It might be on the center armrest. It's somewhere on the console. It's a flat spot or a slightly like angled flat spot. This one is like you put it down and in so it sits against it. I love how this charges, because if you go over a bump and your car is sitting flat, or your phone is sitting flat, or if you take a turn, your phone tends to want to slide out of position. So suddenly it's not charging, and you hear it doing that beep, 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 beep as it's charging and not charging because it's no longer sitting right. The way this sits in there, it's going to sit in there. It's not going to move. So I loved that. I thought that was kind of a neat feature.
Where is that slot?
It's like, I think it's...
That like to the upper right of the console?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because I'm looking, there's a cover there next to the infotainment, to the right of the infotainment controller. Is that where it is?
Yes.
Or is it? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, this thing's got a great looking interior.
The interior is fantastic.
This is the GV70 is basically, a tall hatch version of the G70 sedan, which, I think we're all fairly fond of. Is the 3.5 turbo the only engine they're offering at launch on this thing?
I believe, wait a minute, let me double check. I think it's just, no. You also have a 2.5. Sorry, I had to double check. So this is the bigger of two engines. So you also have a less, which I don't have it. But I don't know. I feel like the 3.5 is really good. I don't know if you went down a little bit, if you would feel it. I kind of think you might. That you might feel the difference. It might not be quite enough oomph.
The 2.5 turbo, they have it tuned a couple of different ways depending on which vehicle it's in. In the GV80, it's 300 horsepower, and then I think the 3.5 V6 is closer to 365, 370, something like that. And I've driven the 4-cylinder in the GV80, and it was fine. So I think in this slightly smaller, lighter vehicle, it'd probably be more than adequate.
Yeah, so I was very happy with it. I give it a gold star. I think I sold one to the guy in the parking lot at Not Your Average Joe's. So,
Excellent. All right. Robbie, you up? Wait, what was the price on this? I don't think you said.
Oh, sorry, pricing. Pricing on this, base pricing. So it starts at $52,600. I had a lot of options. So mine was $64,045, but that adds on a lot. Like you get some extra safety, you get Napa leather seats, you get these 21-inch sport alloy wheels that are absolutely stunning. Carbon fiber trims, 3-zone climate control, a manual rear side sunshades. So you get a lot of extra. So there's like a $5,000 package that's the sport package, and then a $4,900 that's the sport prestige package. So basically $10,000 worth of options on this, but still for $64,000, it's a lot of car for $64,000. Like you're spending money. It's not cheap, but it's. I feel like it's priced fairly and then some.
And, compared to something like a BMW X3 or an Audi Q5 or a Mercedes GLC, probably I guess the GLC, they're all going to be priced at least that much, if not more, for comparably equipped, especially for the high-end model. Excellent. All right, Robbie, you're up.
So this week I drove for like the third time, really, but really for the first time for more than like a day or a few hours. I drove the Volvo XC40 Recharge. This is Volvo's electric vehicle. It's based on the same platform as the Polestar 2, and it is I get the same sort of like when you drive the Polestar 2. You really understand, you're like, oh, okay, this is compared to, say, something from Tesla. And Tesla, they make fine cars, but there is a fundamental difference in the build quality between a Volvo and a Tesla. And you can feel it as soon as you put your foot on the accelerator. As soon as you hit the accelerator, like it's the entire Polestar feels like it's going as one unit, as one single solid unit is going for it, and you get that same feeling with the XC40 Recharge. It is a lot quicker than you would anticipate for a small compact SUV. It has 402 horsepower, and more often than not, it would just when I would hit the accelerator, this is maybe quicker than it should be for. Small SUV, but if you are if you're that person who when they're looking for an SUV and they're paying a premium price, which you're going to pay when you're buying this, and you're thinking, oh, I need this power, then yeah, this is definitely going to have that. Of course, the downside to all this is the range. It's 208 miles of range, which I feel like if you're not bringing 250, you're just not bringing it at this point. The Kona, the Niro, the Bolt, Tesla, the Model 3. I just keep naming EVs that have 250-ish miles of range, and then the Volvo comes in at 208, which is, if you're just cruising around town, it's fine. If you're going on long trips, it does support DC fast charging at 150 kilowatts. So it does charge a little bit quicker than a lot of those other vehicles I just named off. I think the Kona's at 100. For some weird reason, the Bolt is still at 50, like it's 5 years ago. So you're kind of it's this weird balance where you're getting a bit quicker charging, but you don't have that extra range. So you are stopping more often, but you're not. If you're able to find, if you're using Electrify America, you're not at the charging station as long as if you're within those other vehicles. So, and then of course the price. It's a Volvo. Volvo's very upfront that they do not make inexpensive cars. They make luxury cars. So it starts at $54,000. So it is a pricey alternative to, say, the Model Y with less range. But again, you get that Volvo build quality, which it handles really well for an SUV. I drove it through the mountains up in Northern California on some windy roads. And even with, some of these roads are, they need some work, and there's a lot of ruts and bumps and whatnot. And even with that extra heft of that battery, it handled really much better than I anticipated it would for a small SUV. So I really, really liked it. It's a nice, if you live in the city, you need something that you need storage, you need to be able to put people in the back, whatever, but you still want to be able to park your car. The XC40 is just a great little SUV. The Recharge just sort of continues that. It's along the lines where the XC40 Recharge and, let's say, the Hyundai Kona Electric are two great little gas vehicles that those manufacturers just made electric, and they didn't really lose the flavor of those vehicles. They just made them, well, in some cases, better. And I feel like this is actually probably better especially if you're looking for an EV with the XC40. I did some mileage runs, and yeah, the freeway on back roads, drive around the city. It was about 210 to 205, depending on how I was driving. I don't baby these vehicles when I'm driving them. If it's if I'm on a back road, I'm going to drive the way I would in the back road. If I'm on the freeway, I'm going to do 70. I'll probably put the cruise control on. But if I get stuck behind someone, I'm definitely gonna stomp on the accelerator to get around them so I can don't get trapped. Because I've noticed especially with adaptive cruise control, sometimes you'll get behind someone, you're like, all right, this is fine. And then that person just keeps slowing down, and you just keep slowing down, and you're just like, oh, this is fine. And then you realize you're doing like 10 miles under the speed limit. And you're like, oh, wait, what's happening? Hold on. So, yeah, I really like this little SUV. Again, it is it's pricey. You're buying this because you want a Volvo. It has that same minimalistic interior that we've come to know from Volvo. Love it or hate it. That's your individual. It has it has Android Automotive. So it's not Android Auto, but Android Automotive. So the infotainment system is built. It's the underlying architecture is Google, and then Volvo put some stuff on there. But you can ask it just random questions all the time. I kept asking it like how far places were. I kept asking it, what the capital of a state was. If I was stuck in traffic, I was just asking it random things just to sort of pass the time.
Yeah, I mean, anything you can ask.
Yeah.
Anything you can ask of a Google Assistant on a phone, you can do with this because it's got the same assistant built into it.
Did it hear you well? Did it normally know? Were you like, what's the capital to New Hampshire, and it didn't answer like pastrami or something like that?
No, it works really well. It's a lot. I think a lot of the sort of mishearing that people had a long time ago, I think has sort of been solved, especially by the bigger players, Apple, Amazon, Google. I think Mercedes' system is really good. I think the other automaker versions of anyone else, I think those are still sort of like definitely a few years behind those four when it comes to voice recognition.
We'll get to that when I talk about my car.
Okay. So, you can, what was I asking? I was asking just like, when was the first taco? When were tacos invented?
What was the answer to that one? I need to know when
wrong.
the first...
It was just, like, one of them was like some guy made it, and some of them was like, and the, X, 600 BC, I don't know. It was just a bunch of random questions that I was asking that I wasn't really paying attention to, but I just wanted to see what it asked. And then I asked it to read me a recipe, and it wouldn't do that. So you can't just have it read you a recipe, which is sort of a bummer. But you can't tell it to like...
For all that time, all those times you're just like cooking like, food in the car, breaking out that Thanksgiving dinner in the front seat. It can't help you.
If you're driving home and you're thinking, maybe I'll make chicken fried steak tonight. And if the car will tell you, like, this is how you make chicken fried steak, you can make an informed decision before you get to the store that you're like, oh, no, this is way too much work.
I don't have the energy for chicken fried steak.
We're getting corn dogs. I'm sticking it in the microwave. This is way too much work. But it all, the Android Automotive and the Google Assistant also can be used to control aspects of the vehicle. I said it was too cold. It made it warmer. I told it I wanted the driver's side to be 68 degrees and moved it, stuff like that. And then of course you can download apps. I don't know why I didn't download it, but I should have. There was an app for automotive sounds, like car sounds. And I'm not sure if you just like turned it on and it went vroom, vroom. I don't But you could, like, I downloaded the ChargePoint app, which is nice. So you have that native app without having to plug in your phone. It still does not have CarPlay. It's coming, but it still does not have CarPlay. I asked, and they're like, we're working on it. It's coming out. There's going to be an update, but it still does not. It still doesn't have CarPlay. So if you buy one and you have an iPhone, you will get CarPlay eventually. But right now, you don't. But there you go. I like it.
This is the same basic infotainment system that's in the Polestar. The main difference here is that when they updated, they created the electric version of the XC40. They didn't really change the interior from the standard XC40, so you still have the same smaller. I think it's a 9-inch screen in here, whereas the Polestar has I think it's a 13 or 14-inch display. Does the system still work okay even on the smaller screen?
Yeah, it was fine. I think I know that the automakers are making bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger screens, but anything over like 7 inches is
yeah.
which sounds inappropriate, to be honest. But you're like, oh, okay, this is fine. And like a lot of times, I'll get in a car and it'll be like, oh, there's an 8-inch and a 10-inch screen, and I'll have to go back to the car. I'm like, wait, what size screen was this? Because you're just like, oh, it worked. And like, I'm less concerned with the real estate as long as it's not like teeny tiny. Like if you get in a rental. Like if you get into a rental like Chrysler, the screen's like 4 inches, and you're like using CarPlay on a 4-inch, like a tiny. You're essentially using CarPlay on an old iPhone. But you're like, oh, okay, I can see this. This is fine. Like we just bought a Kona EV, and it has CarPlay support, and I'm pretty sure we have the 10-inch one. It might be the 8-inch screen. I'm not sure.
And it doesn't even matter. Don't even.
But it's enough.
I was like, oh, look, I was telling my wife, you have CarPlay now. She's like, oh, cool. I'm like, and it's wireless, so you don't have to worry about plugging it in. She's like, oh, cool, okay. But
yeah, and the other thing is when you're using Google Maps in the car in the Volvo, for if you put in a destination, it actually shows the maps in the instrument cluster. You've got a digital instrument cluster display, so it shows it in there too, and so you see your guidance right in front of you. So you're not relying on the center screen anyway for that, which is I think is a really nice touch.
It's really nice, and for better or worse, I know there's privacy and there's tracking and all these issues that come with using Google products, but we're all using Google Maps is what it comes down to. We're all using that app, and yeah, it's nice having it right there because it's easier to look down quickly than it is to look to the right. And you can be in your house and you can say, oh, I want to go to wherever. And typically you would have to say, oh, let me plug in my phone, and then we wait for Android Auto or wait for CarPlay, and then we launch Google. You could just get in the car and it's like, recent searches because your account is in that car, and you're like, oh, I just want to go here, and then it just goes. So it's nice that way. Again, if you're privacy tracking, et cetera, you don't have to sign into Google. You can still use it. It just won't keep track of all your stuff.
Right, and if you have multiple users of the vehicle, you can have when you get in, you can select which user you are, and so if two people in the house driving the car, each one can have their own sign in on the car. So that helps as well, I think.
Yeah.
Excellent. I think the range, I think the XC40 has the same battery that's in the Polestar, but it's a little bit taller than the Polestar. So the arrow's not quite as good. So that's probably what contributes to the shorter range. Because I think when I drove the Polestar 2 a few months ago, I got I got about 250 miles of range out of it. It's probably just because of the shape of the thing. But I think it's actually probably easier to see out of the XC40 than the Polestar because you don't have that feeling that you're sitting so low. It doesn't have that ridiculous belt line.
Belt line.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you can see now. Yeah. It's essentially they took probably one of their best vehicles, the XC40, and they just shoved electric bits in it. They took the gas bits out and shoved the electric bits in, and like, here you go. And it's a modular architecture, blah blah blah. But yeah, that's essentially what they did. I think it was the CM modular architecture. Yeah, it's in the name.
Yeah, this thing's CMP, compact modular platform, or something like that. And between Volvo and their parent company Geely, they're using that platform on a bunch of different vehicles here and in China and other markets as well. So. Excellent. All right. Well, speaking of voice recognition and really bad voice recognition, I've been driving the Volkswagen Arteon, which is their kind of the current flagship car of the Volkswagen lineup. They used to have the why am I blanking on the name now? What was the big sedan? That's how memorable it was.
I literally can't think of what you're talking about, which is horrible.
They tried back, in the mid 2000s. They launched a sedan that was meant to compete with Mercedes-Benz, and I'm completely blanking on the name. It started with a P.
Phantom. What's
No.
a Phantom?
The Phaeton. The VW Phaeton.
I'm also
Yes.
Phantom.
like,
I'm all,
And
not
it-
Phantom.
Yeah.
and it completely bombed in the U.S. market. It actually apparently did surprisingly well in China. The Chinese market liked it. It did okay in Europe, but it bombed in the U.S. because people weren't thrilled with the idea of an $80,000 Volkswagen. So they've since discontinued the Phaeton. They launched the Arteon a few years ago as their top end sedan. It's nowhere near the levels of luxury of a Phaeton, but it's actually a really nice car. And if you are one of the increasingly few Americans that actually like to drive car-shaped cars as opposed to SUV-shaped vehicles, the Arteon is actually a really interesting choice. I like the look of it. It's it's got a a fastback hatchback look to it. So in that in that respect, it's very similar to something like the Audi A5 Sportback. And if the A5 Sportback is maybe a little bit too rich for your blood, the Arteon I think is actually a really interesting alternative. It's got quite a different look to it, especially from the front, from most Volkswagens that we've had here, at least here in the U.S. for a while. I like the look of it. I also like the way it drives. I've always been a fan of the way VW cars drive. That's why we owned a couple of them, despite their other issues. And it's very comfortable, very roomy. It's got a shocking amount of cargo space in the back. Given that this is basically a mid-sized car, mid-sized sedan, but because it's a hatchback, you have a very large opening in the back. And you can fold the back seats down. With the back seats folded, you have even with the back seats up, there's about I think it's a little over 28 cubic feet of cargo space in the back, and then with the back seats folded, you have almost 60 cubic feet. I actually managed to get a queen size mattress folded in half most of the way into the Arteon, which was pretty impressive.
Did you get it in there far enough that you could actually drive it, or was it hanging out the back in an unsafe way?
It was hanging out the back, but it was not in an unsafe way. I drove it across town, and it was fine. I used a bungee cord to hold the hatch down, and it was fine. It was not unsafe. So, this is and with the seats up, with the back seats up, the back seats are very roomy. There's a lot of leg room in this thing. For the size of the car, you wouldn't expect it to be quite that spacious, but it is. It's very well packaged. The interior is really nice, but this has the same.
There's always a but.
The infotainment system overall is not bad. The infotainment system's fine, but the voice recognition that Volkswagen has, their native built-in voice recognition system, is a complete disaster. If you're trying to find something, if you want to navigate somewhere, just pull over, punch it in, stop, park the car, punch it in on the screen, or plug in your phone, or use your phone, and do it through, Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, because you're never going to find it in the native navigation system. And this was the base model, which has a standard built-in navigation system, built-in voice rec. You're I would say probably 98% chance that whatever you say, it's going to get it wrong. And last fall when Rebecca was still here, I mean, she was complaining about this. She was sitting in front of a post office, and she had a video sitting in front of a post office trying to get the voice recognition system to recognize, to the post office, and it could not find it. It was utterly
right
hopeless.
There. Oh my gosh.
So if you buy a Volkswagen, and I had the same problem in the Atlas. So if you buy a Volkswagen, just don't even waste your time trying to use the native voice recognition system. Just plug in your phone and use Siri or Android Auto. You'll have a much better experience. Everything else about the car I really like. I've been averaging about 31 miles per gallon with it. It's got the 2-liter turbo 4-cylinder with an 8-speed automatic transmission, and VW uses this same engine in a variety of states of tune, across most of their lineup now. So, from the Tiguan at about 180 horsepower up to the Golf R with over 300 horsepower. You can get this same basic engine in a lot of different forms. In the Arteon, it's rated at 268 horsepower, and I believe it's 258 foot-pounds of torque, which is more than adequate. It feels very very responsive, very little turbo lag. On the one I'm driving, which is the SE, front wheel drive SE, this one didn't have much in the way of driver assist systems. It's got I think it's got blind spot monitoring and lane departure warning, but there's no adaptive cruise control on this one or lane keeping assist. But other than that, the rest of it is really nice. You can also get it in with all-wheel drive. So if you live in some place where you're likely to need better traction in winter weather, you can get an all-wheel drive version. The one that I am driving, as I said, is the SE, which is the base model, and with the 2.0, it's front-wheel drive. It has a sticker price, or let's see, the sticker is $38,585, which I think is actually a pretty good value for what you're getting here. It's got the VW's VTEX leatherette seating surfaces, and I've always liked the VTEX. We've had it on a previous VW that we owned. It's not Napa leather, but it also doesn't feel like plastic. It's one of the nicer synthetic faux leather type seating surfaces. I think they do a really good job on it. It's very durable. When we had it on our Jetta, we never had any issues with it. It's easy to clean if you spill something on it. The seats are really comfortable, very supportive, and it comes with a 4-year, 50,000-mile warranty, bumper to bumper, and 7 years, 100,000 miles against rust. So it's VW's. In the past, it used to be a real crapshoot when you bought a VW. Some people would buy one and it would run for hundreds of thousands of miles without issue. Others were in the shop all the time. Our first VW, unfortunately, was in that latter group, but I've known people who've driven them for many, many years without issue. They've gotten a lot better over the years. What I've heard in recent years is that they're much less prone to random things breaking, and so that's a good thing. And they've got a better warranty now than they used to have. So I think you're it's pretty safe bet buying something like this. The let's see, the loaded versions, I had the price list here. So the SEL Premium R line, which is the top end model, goes to 47. So it's gonna be about $48,000 delivered. And that gets you some additional stuff. That gets you actual leather. One thing to note is the USB ports in this and other current VWs are all USB-C. VW's gone all in on USB-C. So if you're going to use, you're going to plug in your devices, you'll want to make sure you have USB-C cables, not the older style USB-A. And it also has wireless support for Android Auto and CarPlay. But the one I have does not have a wireless charger in it. So I just go ahead and plug it in anyway, even though it works well. If you want wireless charging, you've got to step up to the SEL or the SEL Premium to get that. But otherwise, good choice for a car-shaped car.
The car-shaped car.
I like that. Car-shaped car.
Okay. So speaking of car-shaped cars, Robbie, you're actually in Munich right now.
I am. I'm across
you're
the
there.
sea. The magic of technology. I'm in a hotel room in Germany next to a giant picture of an elephant, which I just noticed a few moments ago because I'm half asleep. I have to wear my glasses because when I get tired, I can't see really close. So I have to wear glasses when I'm really tired.
Yeah. So the reason why you're in Germany is
For fun.
The
Currywurst.
For
Currywurst.
Yeah, for the IAA Mobility Show, which was formerly known as the Frankfurt Motor Show. It was technically always IAA, which is a acronym for the German name, which I can't remember right now.
Something with automobiles.
But it's moved from Frankfurt to Munich. It's somewhat smaller than it has been in the past, but that's going on over the next several days while you're there. And Audi had a preview the other day of what they're going to be showing off at the show, which is the second of a series of 3 concept vehicles that they announced back in July. The first was the SkySphere that they showed in Monterey Car Week a couple of weeks back. This new one is called the GrandSphere. Have the two of you had a chance to take a look at this thing yet?
I've seen it on the internet. I should see it this week in the flesh and blood. Well, I guess not flesh, in the metal. The metal and glass.
Metal and glass and fiberglass.
The metal and glass and
fiber and
whatnot. It is, yeah. I mean, these this is something BMW has been doing for a while with these autonomous concept. These concept cars that are supposed to be autonomous. They essentially just try to make them look like a living room in some ways, or like, hey, it's going to be like wood, and here's a plant. We put a plant in it, and the plant thing is always my favorite part because you're just going to drive around with a plant in your car with aphids.
Well, it's electric, so you're saving the planet, so you want to have some green in there.
You got aphids flying around in your car, bugs, worms. You got to water it every day. It's essentially in a greenhouse. Stain on the
carpet because the water overflowed.
Yeah, the water overflows. Now you got soil everywhere. I mean, it's a concept car. So this is, Audi's is like, we're not making this car, but this is a good idea. Here's a bunch of ideas.
I love it. It's like, we're not making this. We're not going to make anything that even closely resembles this. It won't even look like this when it comes out, but look at this cool thing our designers thought up.
Yeah. Like some of the elements of what we hear here. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, from what they said during the presentation, I watched the video presentation of it. This is the design direction for future Audis. So it's not going to look exactly like this, but this is they're moving in a new direction. They've had a very similar kind of look for the last 15, 20 years to their vehicles, and now they're doing something very different. Much even sleeker. Different style of grille and headlights and everything. And this is said to be kind of a preview of where they're going with the next generation A8, their flagship sedan. Whether or not the A8 will have something like the retractable steering wheel that this thing has, which is one of the interesting features. When you put it into the highway autonomous mode, the steering wheel folds forward, so it's horizontal, and then the whole thing retracts back into a slot in the dashboard, and then a little door closes down over the front of it.
See, that makes me nervous because I'm never a fan of things that retract and pop in and out automatically, because then when they don't, and they inevitably don't, you have challenges. Like, it's one thing if it's a door handle. What if it's your steering wheel? Like, how do you get past that malfunction if that happens?
You're like, oh, I guess I just have to keep letting the car drive for this.
I can never drive again.
Just let it go until the battery dies.
This is where we live now.
I do like how it looks. It has that very swoopy. The back end is very like tapered. It looks super futuristic and cool. I mean, it looks amazing. But it is like that sort of like, okay, what one little piece of this really cool design is going to actually show up in something production?
I think mostly the front end is what we're going to see.
Yeah.
I don't think that.
And I think the overall profile is going to be pretty similar.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I think we'll see a lot of the profile of this. And I suspect that they will move to this. Probably not the retractable steering wheel, at least not not this decade. But I think kind of the overall design theme of the interior, more this cleaner, more minimalistic design. Moving away from what they've got today. I wouldn't be surprised to see them move in this direction. I don't think that they'll have the built-in plant. Although they might bring back the little flower holder that they had in the Beetle.
There you go.
On the Beetle.
Yeah.
Let's put a little flower holder in there, as opposed to a potted plant.
Yeah, I feel like there's less danger with a tiny little vase that maybe has an inch and a half of water, and it's like a thimbleful, as opposed to I have an entire plant in my car.
And this is supposed to be built on the new PPE platform that Audi's been working on with Porsche, which is their premium platform electric, I think is what it stands for. So this is the replacement for the current Taycan and e-tron GT platform. Take further evolution based on the stuff they've learned from doing the Taycan and the e-tron. And that platform, the first vehicles with that platform are actually, I think, scheduled to launch later next year, later in 2022, with the next generation A6 going on that architecture. So that's supposed to give it much better range and better overall energy efficiency. But I think if this is the direction that Audi's going with their design, I like it. I don't think we'll see the rear hinge, the suicide doors with no B pillar.
Boo.
That. Yeah, well, I mean, that's always a feature that they put on concept cars so that they can show off what the interior looks like on an auto show stand.
They can just open up the whole thing.
The whole thing.
Yeah.
In real life, though, I won't. That's not going to pass the mustard. Is it mustard? Mustard, not mustard. Sorry, I'm very tired.
Yeah.
Not mustard. I'm looking at mustard, too. So that's probably a problem.
Yeah. Okay. Any more thoughts on the GrandSphere?
No thoughts.
Grand. They should call it the Grande.
The next one is the next Sphere concept is supposed to arrive early 2022, which will be an urban mobility concept, which will probably be a lot less interesting than this one.
I'll just be a bubble.
All right. Next up, the Cadillac Lyriq. Roberto, you had a chance to look at the Lyriq in Los Angeles a couple of weeks ago.
I did. I got a nice walk around, but it was very quick because I had to shoot video of it. So I had to, when you show up to an event and you only have like 45 minutes and you have to shoot video and you have to produce, you're essentially producing like a 10-minute video, but you only have 45 minutes to put it together. I mean, it's you're kind of hurried. So they did a really quick walk around. And they gave me the highlights, but I know you're going to have something much, much better than what I got.
Yeah, I was lucky enough this week to spend 3 hours at the GM Tech Center with the Lyriq team. We spent an hour in the design studio, which unfortunately, my wife would love to see that building. She's seen pictures of it, but if you're a fan of mid-century modern architecture, that place is just amazing. It's a fabulous looking building inside. But we walked through, went back to the studio, and talked to the exterior designers, the interior designers, the color and materials team, and learned a lot of interesting details about this vehicle. Like one of the cool features, like most modern EVs, it doesn't need the same kind of cooling capabilities that an internal combustion engine has, but so you can block off most of the front of the vehicle, to improve the aerodynamics, improve the airflow, because you don't need to have a big hole in the front of the car to cool the engine. but that presents both opportunities and challenges for the designers. If you look at a Tesla, they clearly saw that as an opportunity to do nothing. But Cadillac didn't want to go in that direction. They wanted to, create a new face for Cadillac. And so, you've probably seen, and I'll include in the show notes, a video clip of the light show that you get when you walk up. And when you walk up to the car, it does a pretty impressive light show, in both in the what would have traditionally been the grille and also the headlights and driving lights. That whole grille area, it turns out, is actually one big piece of molded plastic. And what they did was they painted the interior surface of that black, and then they use a laser to basically remove some of the black paint, to create a pattern on there. We're taking away the black paint with an ablation process with a laser, and then they paint over that with a translucent color, translucent material that's kind of similar to what we've seen on the current Hyundai Sonata and also on the Tucson, where when the lights are off, it looks kind of metallic. But then when you turn on the lights behind it, it lights up and shines through. So that's what they've done on the interior of this. And then, they've got a whole bunch of LEDs back there that they can do all kinds of patterns with. And the cool thing about this is, if you look at Cadillacs of recent years, and the same is actually true for a lot of different vehicles, they'll have different variations of the grille for different trim levels. So, sport model might have one kind of grille on it. The luxury model's got a different grille on it. And so what they can do now, because of the process they've used for this, is if they want to create a different pattern on the front of, say, a Lyriq Sport, or a premium luxe Lyriq, they want to have it look different. All they got to do is reprogram the pattern for the laser to cut away the black paint, and they can have a completely different look for different trim levels. And there's no tooling involved. It's just a different program in the different software for the laser. So I thought that was really cool. And the lights, they developed these new LED lights that previously the LEDs for the headlights have been like 85 millimeters wide, so about 3.5 inches wide. These new ones are only 15 millimeters wide, so it's about 3/4 of an inch wide, or actually but more like 5/8 of an inch wide. And so when you see this pattern on the front, they're able to do this vertical lighting, very narrow vertical lights, and still be able to meet all the lighting standards. And again, because it's all programmable, what they're going to be able to do is, if and when the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration actually approves advanced lighting systems, they'll be able to do some of the kind of matrix lighting stuff that we've seen from companies like Audi and Mercedes in Europe, where they can light up the LEDs, in different patterns. So as you're driving down the road at night, you can actually have your high beams on to light up the road and the periphery of the road, and have essentially just partial low beams, where it sees a car in front of you. So you're not blinding cars coming towards you, or if you're following somebody, it can lower the light intensity just in that area, so you're not blinding other drivers, but everything else around them is all lit up, which I think is a really cool feature. And they'll be able to do that just by changing the software, if and when regulators in the U.S. Get around to updating the headlight standards.
They've been saying they've been working, because they did that test like in 12. I don't know. They did a test a long time ago, and they're like, yeah, in our tests in the laboratory, a couple times it blinded a motorcyclist. I'm like, I ride a motorcycle, and people drive around with their high beams on all the time. I'm like, it's So apparently I know people have been lobbying them for it, but they're supposed to be testing it again at some point. But who knows? Fingers crossed.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get that, because there's a lot of interesting things you can do with that. I know, one of the demos I've seen from Audi is actually, being able to light up, the specific lane that you're in. So using the maps that they've got and the sensors, they can specifically put more, brighter light in your lane, so you can see your lane and also see where, based on your steering angle, where you're going, where you are in that lane.
That's cool.
So it can give you a lot better situational awareness when you're driving at night, which is always much more challenging than driving in the daytime. So I think that's a really good thing, and there's all kinds of other stuff that Audi's done as well. And I'd love to see that happen on vehicles here in the U.S. You can get that stuff in Europe, but you can't get it here. One other interesting detail that they had, because this is an EV, EVs rely on aerodynamics a lot more than internal combustion vehicles, because when you lift off the accelerator, you don't want the air slowing the vehicle down. If the vehicle is going to slow down, you want to be able to recapture as much of that energy for regenerative braking and put it back in the battery, so you maximize your range. And so they spent a lot of effort on the aerodynamics of the Lyriq. And this was the first vehicle that they've done right from the very beginning of the program on GM's new rolling road wind tunnel. And so traditional wind tunnels for automotive have been, they have a flat steel surface. They roll a car into the wind tunnel, and they turn on the fan, and they do all their testing on it. But when the wheels aren't moving, the interaction with the air is very different from when they are rotating. And they found this out in racing a long time ago. Formula One race teams started doing rolling road wind tunnels back in the late 80s, but they're a lot more complicated to do. GM, I think, might be the first automaker with a rolling road wind tunnel, a full-scale rolling road wind tunnel. And Ford is actually building one right now as well in Dearborn. But the Lyriq was the first GM vehicle. They've done some work on the rolling road tunnel with some other programs over the last couple of years, but this was the first one that right from the beginning they used it. And one of the interesting things they learned from that is when the tires are rotating, if you look at your tires, you'll find that along the sidewalls there's a ridge along there between the sidewall and the tread area from the way that they mold the tires, and they found that was actually causing a surprising amount of drag, and so they worked with their tire suppliers to figure out a way to mold that so you can minimize that ridge, reduce that ridge, and reduce the amount of drag. So like most modern vehicles, the Lyriq has its tire surface out as close to flush with the surrounding bodywork as they can, but now they also got rid of that ridge, and they were able to reduce the coefficient of drag by about 0.01. So that's what they call 10 counts of drag, which is a notable reduction from just one change. Most changes, are just 2 or 3 counts of drag. They did 10 counts just from changing the tire construction to reduce that. And they're also working on things. The concept version of the Lyriq that they showed last year had the camera mirrors on the sides like Audi's got in the e-tron in Europe, and they've got in some other vehicles overseas. Those aren't legal here yet either, but if and when those become legal, we'll probably see those added to the Lyriq and other vehicles. And then one last aero thing that they did was when you look at the Lyriq in profile, the tailgate glass is got it's kind of a fastback design, very steeply raked, and there's a spoiler at the top, like most SUVs and hatchbacks have, but they've got a flow-through area on there, and so they spent a lot of time shaping that spoiler so the air going through there, running across that rear glass, can keep that rear glass clean. So they're able to get by without a windshield wiper or a wiper on the tailgate which both reduces drag because that when that wiper is sitting there on the tailgate, that's more drag, and especially at the back end of the car where the air's got to separate from the body, that can be really disruptive. And it also reduces weight and cost, of course. So they claim to be able to keep that back glass clean without having to use a wiper on there. So we'll see how that actually works in real life when this car comes out next year. But a lot of interesting design details they did on that.
I have a question about the tires, Sam. So they said they worked with whoever's making the tires to come up with something where they reduced all the air, the drag on there. Does that mean that are your tires going to be more expensive, like when you go to replace them? Is that like a fancy tire that's a high cost?
I don't know. I mean, presumably, I don't think so.
I wasn't sure if they said. I was just curious if it's a very specific tire and they have to get rid of that little ridge. I was like, huh.
Well, no,
they've
got a couple of different tires. Yeah, they've got a couple different tire suppliers.
They do.
And so so it's not just one specific tire. They've got different sizes and from different manufacturers. And my guess is that, they'll be pushing all tire suppliers to move in this direction because as everybody's moving towards EVs and aero becomes more important, I think everybody's going to want to make the same kind of change.
Right.
So
It'll help everyone. That's true.
In the future, all tires are going to move in this direction.
It'll be less because there's less actual rubber because you got to shave some off.
There's
just
a little bit of
it.
This tire is now 30 cents less than it was a year ago because
let's get new tires all the time.
But we're going to charge you $30 more.
Because
the machine that made it little bit less cost us $9 bazillion.
Yeah,
so
that
we
machine.
have to recoup that cost.
Yes.
So you're saving 30 cents in rubber, but your R&D and tooling
Astronomical.
astronomical.
Yeah. One thing that some people will undoubtedly be disappointed by is the fact that despite the Lyriq having this profile, is designed to look premium with a long hood, a long dash to axle ratio. There's no front trunk. I asked Cadillac about this.
Frunk. How can you not have a frunk?
There's no frunk. Their explanation is that they took some of the electronics that are typically packed in the back of the vehicle under the cargo floor and put all that stuff in the front, and it didn't really leave enough room for a good-sized front trunk. Given the length of the hood on this thing, I think that's a bit of a cop-out. But to their credit, there is actually a nice...
Forget the front.
I think there actually is...
We're done.
When you lift the cargo floor, there is actually a nice deep well behind the rear axle for more stuff. So there is quite a bit of cargo room in this thing. But I think they could have put some space in the front as well. Another thing about the Lyriq is it's going to support if you have an 80 amp circuit in your garage, you'll be able to do 19.2 kilowatt charging at home. Which is fairly fast charging. Yeah. The charge cord that comes with it will support. It's a dual voltage charge cord, like most EVs are increasingly now. So you can, if you don't have to necessarily have a wall box, if you just have a 240 volt dryer outlet in your garage, you can plug it in directly and get and charge at 240 volts without having to spend another $400 or $500 on a wall charger, just with the cord. But that's going to be limited to 7.2 kilowatts. If you want the 19 kilowatts, you do have to buy a wall charger.
Oh,
this will be they're gonna start production in I think sometime in February for this thing down in Tennessee, and it should be on sale in the spring. And the launch edition is the one that's going to cost $60,000, and that's got the only option on the launch edition. The standard wheels and tires are 20-inch. The launch edition, the only option on that is the 22s, and that's another $2,000. So for 62 or 62.5, you're all in. You've got every available option, including the Android automotive-based infotainment system with the 33-inch curved display in front of you. And this is the first one, unlike the Mercedes Hyperscreen that has, a single sheet of glass that spans across, but actually has 3 separate displays under there. This is all just one continuous display. The whole thing is one giant touchscreen at 33 inches. So that's it. That's all I got on the Lyriq for now.
You think you're making money off the Lyriq when it launches? Because at that price point? Like within the year, do you think they'll be making, unless if it doesn't sell gangbusters, you think they'll be losing? All right. Because I'm just curious, like how, because I think they'll
at least break even on it, and I think they'll probably be profitable on this one.
Cool, because to me the Lyriq at where it's that price point is, I'm trying to sort of connect that to the Ultium platform, which means that they can put a nice premium electric SUV at 60, they might be able to get a nice, inexpensive EV for regular folks, maybe 25, which would be a big deal.
Yeah, and I think that will be possible. I think we will see, like a, something like like a Chevy Equinox type of vehicle that you'll be able to get for under $30,000 before incentives. And right now, at least unless Congress passes something, there are no incentives available, at least at federal level, for GM vehicles.
Oh, yeah, for GM.
But I think that they'll be able to offer something like a compact crossover, probably in the $28,000 range, electric. And I think that'll be a good product. And one other thing to note about the Lyriq, that launch edition, they're launching only with the rear-wheel drive version, which is 340 horsepower. The all-wheel drive, the dual-motor all-wheel drive, will be coming later in the model year. So that will be more. That'll be probably like $65,000, $67,000, something like that.
But you can drift with the rear-wheel drive one.
That's true. You can do that.
There you go.
There you go. I'm just saying.
Plenty of torque.
Just saying.
Yeah. All right. Next up, Nicole and I were both out in California. As we record this was just over a week ago, to drive the new Infiniti QX60, which is Infiniti's, their second generation of their 3-row crossover. Nicole, what'd you think of the QX60?
You know what? I liked it. I thought it was good. I had minor complaints about it for the most part. Nothing was major. My only genuine major-ish complaint was about how they've packaged the captain's chairs. You can only get them on the very top trim, which is the autograph. And it starts at just over $60,000. If you want captain's chairs on anything else, tough luck. You can't get it. And I thought that was a weird omission. I mean, I know that weird. Sometimes they're standard when you get to those trims, and then you can option backwards and get the bench seat if you want, and sometimes the other way around on lower trims. But yeah, so you can only get the captain's chairs on the top trim, which I was kind of like, well, that's sort of a stinker. But it is. I was like, oh, what if I want those and I only want the base trim? But it's beautiful. It has that luxury Infiniti feel. I feel like they stepped up their game a little bit. I thought they did a little bit of a better job. It didn't seem so like some of Infiniti's cars. You get this luxury sense, but you're sort of almost like this was luxury 10 years ago. Like there's something sort of dated about it. This one feels very like luxury today. Do you know what I mean? And so it just the styling of it.
Contemporary luxury.
More contemporary. So it feels a little bit more refined, I think, for that particular, for managing to do that. It has a good amount of cargo room. It has good towing. It was very nice to drive. There's just one engine in it. There's that. Now I can't find a 3.5 V6 with 295 horsepower.
Yep.
It moves it. I mean, I felt like it was responsive. If you're buying a car like this, you're not buying a sports car. You're buying a great big SUV to carry your friends and your family and the kids, and it does that, and it does it with quite a lot of style and quite a lot of luxury. And overall, I was a fan. Sam, what'd you think?
I was really impressed by the way it drove. I agree with you. That it seems like a more cohesive design than before, especially the interior. The last one, the last generation of Infinitis, when they had this dual screen infotainment system, it had, when you look at it from a checklist standpoint, it had all the right stuff there, but it didn't necessarily seem as thoroughly thought out as it could have been.
Yeah. Wasn't the resolution on those screens different too? Wasn't like the resolution?
Was it?
Wasn't there like
I'm
a
not sure if the resolution was
differential?
Different.
There was like some sort of
I'm not sure if the
weirdness with
resolution was actually different, but they were different. They were different screens. So like the top screen was, one of these, it was a glossy, all flush finished, like you find on most laptops, where it's got kind of that black trim on it, so to enhance the contrast. Mm-hmm. And then the lower one was kind of set in. So the top screen was for your media and navigation, and then the lower one was for your control stuff. And it seemed like an afterthought. It's like two different teams did the top half of the console and the bottom half, and they didn't talk to each other.
You're making a screen too?
Bolt it together.
I don't know. Just put them both in. It'll be fine.
Shove them in there. It'll work.
So. Yeah, so some of the stuff that was, in the lower screen before is back to physical controls now, which I like.
Good.
And I think it's just a more cohesive design this time. So I think that's a good thing. To your point about the captain's chairs, Nicole, one of the things that is nice about this, if you do have kids, or if you're actually planning to use the third row, which presumably if you're buying a third 3-row crossover, hopefully that is part of the plan. The seats, the second row captain's chairs are the same structure. They're they have different finish on them and everything, but they're the same structure as what's in the new Nissan Pathfinder, which shares its platform with this, which means that if you have child seats installed in those second row seats, you don't actually have to remove those to get into the third row. The whole seat tilts forward, like from the front edge of the seat, and you can tilt it forward with a child seat still in there and still be able to get into that third row, which I think is a really handy feature.
That's a huge feature, because when you, like you said, if you have a 3-row SUV, you're probably piling kids in there a lot, and you've got those car seats. And any parent who's ever had to take car seats in and out, even if they're the boosters, it's a pain in the butt, because you have to take the seat out, then you're gonna move it forward. You got a kid who's like, then you're trying to get a child in. You've got a car seat in one hand, you get him in the back, then you got to put it's a pain in the neck. So to be able to leave that car seat in there and just scooch the seat forward, let the other kids in the back, put the seat right back, and the car seat's still ready to go. That's kind of nice. I like that.
Did they demo this at the drive event?
They did have they had one at the one stop where they did have a car seat sitting in there, and they activate it, and the whole thing flips forward, the seat stays in place, and then it comes back. Yeah.
Because my follow-up question is, did they put like a little baby doll in it, and you see what happens if you pushed it forward with the baby doll?
You were very much not supposed to do it with your kids in the seat, Roberto.
I know, but it's just, that would be my first, that I'm like, let's see what happens. This is why I don't have children. I can't be trusted, because I'm like, hey, let's see what happens when we do this. You cool with that? And the kid will be like, yeah.
Kid's like, that's okay. I'm folded in half like a piece of origami, but I'm good.
I'm good.
Yeah, no, I think, depending on how big the kid is, they would probably be safe in there. I think there's enough clearance between the top of that and the front seats that you'd probably be okay.
But it is very much not recommended, Sam.
Yeah, don't do this.
Do not do this with the child secured in the seat only.
Don't do this.
Not recommended, but we all know that people do stuff with their vehicles that is often not recommended by the manufacturers.
I don't believe you.
So you have to make sure you design it, taking into account the potential for misuse of the product, and minimize the risk of anything bad happening if customers do misuse the product. Some manufacturers don't have that philosophy, but I think a company like Infiniti and Nissan, they generally try to follow that.
Mm-hmm.
In the cargo area in the back, I was talking about having that deep well in the back of the Lyriq. They've also got one in the back here. So you've got the flat cargo area, so you can fold down the third seats, and you get a nice long. Actually, you can fold the third and second row seats, have a really huge flat cargo area. But there's also this, when you lift up the door, there's a fairly deep well right in the back where you can, and it's plastic lined. So if you're going to the beach, as we did when we were out there, although I don't think anybody went swimming.
It's the most dangerous beach in California because of the undertow.
Which beach?
So
which beach was it?
Goat Rock, Goat Hill.
Goat Rock.
All, to be completely honest, they're all very dangerous. You should not, if you're not a strong swimmer or you've never swam in the ocean, just don't go into the water in Northern California. It is very, very dangerous. Yeah. Don't trust the sea. As a surfer, I will tell you, the sea will kill you. And anyway, that's my PSA for the day.
The PSA for the day.
My PSA. Don't Sam, fold your baby in half, and don't trust the sea.
And Sam, that little cargo, that underfloor cargo thing that you're talking about, one of the other nice little, I think little features make such a big difference. Normally, in most of them, when you open up the little floor panel, you have to hold the floor panel up because it wants to flop back down. And this will stay open. So once you open it, it will stay open and you can load your stuff and then close it. Otherwise, it's like you do this awkward thing where you're trying to load and hold the door at the same time. So small detail, but it makes a big difference in terms of how easy it is to live with the car.
Especially if you're carrying a little baby that you want to fold in half.
Correct. Exactly.
I'll be curious how well those friction hinges hold up after, 8 or 10 years, and whether it still stays up like that. But at least when it's new, it works very well.
You'll remember the golden years
But who's keeping their Infiniti for 8 or 10 years? I feel like the person buying this Infiniti is probably not keeping it for 10 years. You have a luxury car, you're going to trade out before.
Somebody will buy a used one. And they'll be. The average age of cars in the U.S. is over 12 years now. So
is it over 12? I thought it was 11. It's creeped up, huh?
Yeah.
No, it's just over 12 now.
Cars are getting better.
So it's probably getting longer and longer every month that the chip shortage goes on too. But having that plastic liner in there, means you can throw wet stuff in there, wet towels and things like, dirty shoes after a hike, things like that. So it's it's a handy feature to have there. So
store filth.
The design. Yeah, the design is definitely a different direction for Infiniti. What do you think of this new design direction for the brand?
I like it. I think, kind of like how I was saying, I feel like the interior made it look a little bit more luxury interior of today instead of luxury interior of a while ago. I feel like the design is a good thing. I think it's a little bit more contemporary. There was something sort of like weirdly bulbous and clunky at the same time about the prior design language as time went on. And I feel like this one is definitely more streamlined. You can see this one moving in the direction of design in general, as opposed to just, we're not really going to mess with that too much yet. So I think it's an improved design. I like it. I think it looks more luxury than the old vehicle did. So I think I think the design is a good thing.
Yeah, I think when I first saw it, when they first revealed it back in June or whenever it was in the spring, I saw it. It struck me that it looks like a combination of current Mazda and Lincoln design. With kind of the dark floating roof of the Lincoln. They going to the wraparound glass at the back at the D pillar, and then the smoother sort of water sculpted finish of the sheet metal, more like what we've seen from Mazda in recent years with their current design language. But I think it's a look that works for this vehicle, and it'll be interesting to see how it translates to other future Infiniti models. Which when they did the reveal in June, I asked that question of Alfonso Abaya, the head of design for Nissan, and he said, "Yeah, this is what you can expect from future Infiniti models as well." So I think there's a lot to like here, and the price point starts I think about 38,000 for base model.
Base
And
model. I think it's more than that. 46, isn't it?
Is it 40? Is it 46?
46. Okay. 46 is your base.
And then, the loaded autograph with all-wheel drive is about 65, roughly.
Right. So it's not cheap, but it's not crazy expensive.
Yeah. You and I, Nicole, did have a chance to sit down and chat with Jeff Pope, who is the group vice president of Infiniti for the Americas, while we were out in California. And I will attach that on after this. I neglected to put out the call for any questions for this episode, so we don't have any listener questions to answer.
Oh, no.
I know I am. Yeah, I am. But right after this, stay tuned, and you will hear the Jeff Pope interview. But that's it. That's all we got for this week.
That's all we got. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye. All right. Sam here with Nicole, and we are sitting in Napa with Jeff Pope, the Group VP of Infiniti Americas. Glad to be here with you, driving the QX60 today. Jeff, why don't we start off with Infiniti as a brand? Describe what you want Infiniti to be. How should people think of the Infiniti brand, and what makes it different from any of the other multitude of premium brands out there?
Sure, that's a nice big rounded question, but I've been with Infiniti, as I said, for 15 years now, so I have a real passion for what this brand has been, what it is, and what it plans to be in the future. And really, all three of those things are still tied to the same thing. We're curated luxury. We're about hospitality, both within the vehicle and actually in our dealerships, and the experience our consumers expect to get. We've been one of the top customer satisfaction brands in the industry for years. And that's all based upon the commitment to what Infiniti is and what the expectation is of not only our vehicles, but the experience for our customers.
And how do you think the new QX60 fits into that?
Yeah, I think in every form and fashion, this has been obviously not because it's the newest one, because it's my favorite one. It's my favorite vehicle because from engineers to designers to our marketing and sales organization, everybody has been walking that same path to understanding not just creating a premium 3-row SUV for just utility, but incorporating all those things that we just talked about, specifically hospitality and what hospitality means on the interior of the cabin. So a serene, quiet cabin, from just the lack of vehicle noise inside the cabin to the attention to detail on concave speaker covers or the attention to detail on the quilting that you see in the autograph version of the car. Everything that's been done has been done for a specific reason, even including the back hatch. When you lift up the rear panel, it doesn't fall down. You can put it at any position, and it's there for a reason that is not technologically sound. It has nothing to do with IT or mechanics. It just simply is smart. And when we look at smart hospitality and smart utility, this vehicle says it all. Then you package it with what I think is probably the most elegant design we've seen from Infiniti in years. There's not a bad angle on this vehicle.
And I just took pictures out of it up there, and I would have to agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, Infiniti's had a fascinating history. When it started, I remember when the Q45 originally came out 32 years ago now. It was quite distinct. And Infiniti came out at the same time as another new premium brand, and
who will not be mentioned.
And for all of its virtues, the one thing that brand lacked for a long time was really distinctive design, and especially that first product. That competitor to the Q45. The Q45 was really, really distinct in a lot of ways, over the years, Infiniti's had, at various times a different look. And now the brand is making another transition. For the last decade, it's had a particular look with kind of the muscular creased flanks and that hooked C-pillar design, and now making another transition. You talked a lot about modern Japanese luxury over the last day or so. Talk about that some more and how that fits in with what you're doing with this vehicle.
Yeah, I'll talk about it in two facets. One, from a design perspective, you're absolutely right. There's always an element of Japanese luxury that's instituted into our vehicles. You heard a little bit about it today. When you look at the piano keys becoming more of a signature item in our cars, but inside the headlamp itself, you see what represents folds of a kimono. When you look at our double arch grille, that's always been a signature for Infiniti and still maintained. So there's pieces that continue to go throughout time. And I don't think we've necessarily changed direction, but we have modified and really adapted the design language and design DNA. Even the grille itself, that's inspired by origami. And little things along the vehicle that all represent Japanese luxury. But I'll go back to what we talked about before, is what it really means to me is Japanese hospitality. And that's what has rung true with me ever since I started with the brand way back in 2006.
So I liked when you were talking about how the design elements work. We saw a video from someone who couldn't make it over from Japan. He was talking about the quilted leather and how it was inspired sort of by how water droplets spread out across the pond. And it was neat to see it because they had like a split screen and showed it both. I'm like, well, now I look at this in a whole different way. Like now this just got much cooler than just diamond stitch pattern on a,
Yeah, it's not just straight lines.
Right. Like there's a little bit more happening there.
It's all ripples in a pond. And that's where, I will never claim to be a designer or a retired designer in any form whatsoever. So I really appreciate the individuals that we have helping us through our journey on design, because it's so special and so good, and the dedication that people have to it is really amazing. When you just sit, I would love for you to just have a moment with him individually, Taisuke, and just talk with him, and you'll just walk away just so impressed with him, but not just as him as an individual, just how he focuses on the business and how he tries to put those two things together, the business, the design, and then the brand itself.
So, would you say that, given this new QX60, the 3-row crossover, in some ways, a very family-oriented vehicle, would you consider this, since it is kind of setting off a new evolution of design for Infiniti, as perhaps the flagship, the most important vehicle in the lineup right now?
Yeah, I think QX60 has always served a very strong purpose in the brand lineup itself. We've had a number of very strong vehicles that built the DNA of our brand over the years for different reasons. The FX was iconic. When you talk about a vehicle that serves as a halo, QX80 has been that for years and years because it's the ultimate description of luxury, in my opinion. So QX60, though, fits it because now you're talking about a mainstream, large segment, and what it's bringing in is the ability to have all the utility that's required in that category, but then bring the true identity of Infiniti to it. And that's where I think it's so important for us, because now it's not just about a vehicle that sets itself apart in a smaller segment. We're talking about a vehicle in a very large segment that is making a true statement about who Infiniti is as a brand. Because when you look at the capability of the vehicle driving it, you add in all the complementary features on the interior of the car, and then you combine it with the design and technology that we have, it truly makes a statement for us more so than any vehicles in the past.
So do you think that's strong enough? Because it's like there are a lot of luxury options, all with varying pluses and minuses. Do you think people are going to see it and think, okay, yeah, I'm not going to go with those other guys we don't name. Like Infiniti has got me. You think it's strong enough to do that?
I'm really, really confident. And as much as I try to make sure I keep myself in check from time to time, every time I get to sit down with an individual group of people that have gotten to drive it, look at it, or whatever, it just gives me more confidence. Because it's not me having to sell it. I just kind of, it's like rolling the ball on the table and saying, what do you think? And what we're getting back is so positive. Just as a for instance, we've launched lots of cars over the past decade, and they've been very good to successful to, we wish it would have been more successful at times, maybe. But this car, as soon as we announced it back in July, the response has been off the charts. Consumers have really flocked to the dealerships looking for more information. How can I do it? We have people getting in line to purchase this car, wow. Which tells this is a 3-row premium SUV. This is not a luxury sports car, but people are getting in line to purchase this vehicle. And also, they're looking at all the details in the car. The autograph version itself is drawing so much attention and desire, and people are seeing the value in the car too.
That is the autograph edition is, and that's what we've been driving today. And it's, the way you've described it and all the press materials. This is the most luxury one, and everybody, their top trim is their most luxury trim. But you get in this, and you do have that sense of like, they mean it. Like, this is really everything. The colors, the design, the feel of it, the richness of the materials. It is very premium feeling.
And the quietness, too.
Oh, my gosh, it's so smooth and quiet.
This morning, because it was nice and cool out, for a while we were driving with the windows down. And then when we put the windows up, it was transformative in terms of how quiet it suddenly felt, like a cocoon, like being in a bubble.
Sure. So. Yeah, I think it's my favorite question to ask everybody is, so did it deliver what we said? Because we can talk all we want. But at the end of the day, what we want people to come back is saying, okay, did anything I say or that Wendy said or anything else, did it come back and were we wrong?
So what do you think, Sam? Did it deliver what it said? I know we're still in the middle of the drive. We got a little more driving to do, but...
I think it largely delivers on what you promised. I'm curious, though, in this segment, this premium segment, I think there's a lot of companies trying to deliver on those same kinds of qualities. And, especially, as we go forward in the future and we move towards electrification and quietness becomes an even bigger factor. And, some of things like, traditional powertrain kind of fall by the wayside as differentiating things. How do you see Infiniti continuing to evolve and continuing to set itself apart from the rest of the industry?
Well, first and foremost, I'll talk about this car, and then we'll talk a little bit about moving forward, what you have to think about. We're not going to talk about what we're going to do.
Yeah,
we'll talk about how we think about it.
Cannot comment on future products.
Cannot comment on future products.
I'm thinking more in terms of vision. You made that official. What do you see as the vision?
Yeah, but let me start with this. Is the first thing you do is you listen to the consumer, period. And you have to ask the right questions with the consumer, especially in this segment, because you're right. It is a very competitive segment. There are some brands and some vehicles that have very luxury treatments. You have some brands that have very solid performance and dynamics. And then you have the Infiniti QX60 that gives you the best of it all. And I really believe that to the bottom of my heart of how, because I've driven this car, I've been all over this car, I've been through competitors. I'm just so happy where we are. Now, how do we look for this in the future? You mentioned electrification. This segment is probably going to be one of the last segments to be electrified. When you look at what consumers are looking for electrification, what is doing that quietness, I think we've shown we can deliver a quiet cabin with an ICE engine, with all the elements that we put into the vehicle, yet the cabin is still serene and quiet. But at the end of the day, we have to listen to consumers. And when we see the consumers starting to look for something different and new and different powertrains, we have to be there listening to the consumer and be open to the flexibility in the future. That's the biggest thing, is don't get yourself so centered and so pigeonholed that you can't maneuver. You have to figure out how to be flexible.
Okay, you said you spent a ton of time in this car. You have to pick one thing that's your favorite feature. You can't just give me like 10 things you like. One thing, your absolute most favorite thing of this car.
Yeah, my favorite thing is design. I don't know if you're going to give me that one as a feature.
I'll let you say design. Pick a thing. You can.
I will tell you the absolute favorite view of that car for me is the front of the vehicle and standing in front of it and looking at the athletic stance that this car has. I think when you look at this segment, you think. You mentioned it earlier. Okay, this segment's more of a family car. It's premium SUV. It's an SUV, 3-row SUV. But when you look at this vehicle from the front, you're kind of going, okay, I know what it has is all the utility, but man, this thing looks incredible.
There it is. You can't see it, but yeah, there's a.
That's my favorite. That's my favorite.
I'm looking at a picture from the front of it. It does make a first impression. Yeah.
I think that impression alone, too, when you look at this consumer, we talked a lot about our target consumer, Claire, but the reality is that this car is going to be attractive to many different types of consumers. I have 2 boys. I have a dog. I have a cat. My wife's a professional. This is a vehicle. The old QX60 is a vehicle she would drive often and use it for utility. This is a vehicle I would drive easily and have no problem pulling it up to the country club, going out to a fancy dinner and pulling it through the valet, yet still have all the utility I need in the back to get things done. I lead a busy life too, so this car is perfect because it does everything I need to do. But yeah, front of the car design.
Okay, I accept that as your one favorite
Thank
thing.
you.
Okay, so following up with that, I will represent the dark side of this conversation. What is the one element that is not satisfactory to you that you would change?
You really expect me to answer that?
I was like, is he going to answer that, or is he going to? Nope.
A glass of wine later, I would have to do that for you because listen, there's always things you can poke at and put, but when I talk about the things that I look at in this car, and I'm not going to list them all, they're so minor and they're so minute because I'm so picky now. Because the car is so good in all aspects. Somebody did ask me that question the other day, is what didn't you get? And I was dumbfounded because I sat there and said, I don't actually have anything that I asked for that I didn't get on this vehicle.
That's a good thing. I mean, you want to walk away and say like, okay, I got all the things I thought were super important. If you actually had ready answer to that, I'd be a little bit nervous. Like, okay, let me tell you what we missed.
Well, having worked in the industry a long time, I know there's always something that you wish you could have done that you either didn't fit the budget, didn't have the time. Yeah. There's always something.
I would tell you that there's nothing that makes a substantial difference in the vehicle to me.
Okay.
There's always little nuances where I'll look at a car and go, oh, I wish it could do that. I wish I had a headrest, maybe, or something. But there is nothing that changes the viability of this car that I did not get from the company.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Anything else?
No, that answers my question. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you guys for spending the time with us today.
This has been fun.
Yeah.
Awesome.